It is tricky and very difficult to use a tool that we're not even aware of. In this nugget, I'd like to share with you a tool that we could use if we need to convert physical machines over to virtualized ones. Let's begin. I'd like you to imagine that you and I have been hired by a company that is just beginning their journey into the world of virtualization with vSphere. And currently they have several servers in place with their own physical hardware. So for example, maybe a SQL server or some type of database server, an email server, and a web server. And what the company would like to have us do is, instead of having these run as separate physical appliances, they would like to have them run as virtual machines inside of a vSphere environment. And one of the tools that VMware has provided for us that we can use is called the VMware vCenter Converter Standalone. And its purpose is to assist us in migrating or moving machines from a physical environment into a virtualized one. So we could call it P2V, from physical to virtual. It also has the ability to move from virtual to virtual. For example, if you have a Hyper-V environment and you want to move those VMs over to a VMware environment, VMware is only too happy to have you make that conversion as well. And it's referred to Converter Standalone because it's a separate application. You download it from VMware, you install it, and it does not come prepackaged as part of vCenter. So it's standalone in that sense. So here are a few of the objects and players in the world of vCenter Converter. We have the function of a server, which actually does the conversion, for example, from a physical machine over to a virtualized one. Another aspect of the vCenter Converter is the client. And for this client, I'm going to go ahead and put here that represents us sitting at the client, calling the shots. We're effectively telling the server what to do. And then we have another object referred to as an agent, which is software that temporarily runs on the device, the source device, that's going to be converted through vCenter Converter. So that agent can be running, for example, on a Windows computer or a Linux computer. So in making the decision to install vCenter Converter, we need to decide where the server function is going to be. And this could be a physical Windows computer, or it could be a virtualized Windows computer. It's going to ask us during the install, what piece or pieces do you want to install on this computer? Do you want to install the server, or the client, or the agent, or all three, or two of the three? And so if we just install the server piece here, then we could go ahead on this computer that we're sitting at, and we could run the install again and say that we just want to install the client. And let's imagine that we want to convert this source Windows physical computer. We could also go over to that Windows computer, run the same install program, and just install the agent. However, we also have the option through the converter to dynamically install the agent on that source computer, that Windows device, in order to go ahead and do the conversion from that physical machine over to a virtual machine. And regarding source and destination, the destination for the conversion, we can put it over into vCenter. As part of vSphere, we can also convert it over to VMware's desktop solutions, including VMware Fusion and VMware Workstation. And in the context of our vSphere environment, our target would be vCenter and the ESXi hosts that are supporting our vSphere environment. So if a person wanted to just practice with the basic functionality of vCenter Converter, they could actually install it on a standalone machine, install the client piece, the server piece, and actually do all the conversions on this computer. The benefit of separating the client from the server is that we can manage the conversions remotely, sitting at our computer, and let the server, for the hours it takes to do the heavy lifting, we don't have to have our computer tied up doing the actual conversion, because we're managing the conversion remotely from the client. And there's quite a bit of flexibility when working with vCenter Converter. If we have source computers, they don't all have to be powered on. Many can be powered off, especially if they're already sitting in some type of other virtualized environment, so they don't have to be powered on to begin with. And source devices also could be powered on. So in some cases, for example, let's say we have a Linux box, this one right here. The way that the server connects to that Linux box is going to connect over SSH. So that would imply that this Linux physical machine is currently running, and the SSH daemon, the SSH service, is currently running and willing to accept connections. Then as part of the setup for that conversion, we would identify what the username is, what the IP address is of this host so we can reach it. And that would be the source. We'd also specify the destination for the resulting virtual machine, and then let the server chew on that for as long as it took to do that conversion. It's also pretty flexible regarding the type of disks that could be on the source. So on the source, if we had dynamic volumes, those are supported, or disks that use MBR, which is an acronym for Master Boot Record. Or if we had disks that used a GUID partition table, and for short that would be GPT. But there are some restrictions, so the best thing to do would be to get the PDF or the online documentation regarding the latest and greatest version of vCenter Converter Standalone that you're currently using, and then compare what you'd like to do with the existing restrictions. For example, if we had a source machine that had a hybrid disk, so it's using a hybrid GPT/MBR disk, it can't handle that as a disk type on the source for the conversion. And most of those gotchas and restrictions and requirements are well documented in the online documentation provided by VMware, which you can also download as PDFs. So now if we're asked to do a large-scale conversion between physical devices and virtual machines, we now have in our arsenal this amazing tool called vCenter Converter. So I'm glad that you joined me in this nugget. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.